and welcome back to the TorontoWebsiteDeveloper.com. I am Peter Jaworski, the Toronto website developer specializing in Drupal. And in this 10th and final video tutorial of this 10-part video tutorial series on an introduction to PHP, I want to walk you through what objects are. PHP can be used as an object-oriented programming language. And so for most of you, you might not be familiar with what that is, but if you're working with Drupal, you're going to need to have some familiarity with that because Drupal nodes are actually objects, and you'll see a bunch of different other examples of this. Users are objects, and it's becoming more and more object-oriented. Views, the module itself was object-oriented, and it's been folded into Drupal, so you'll be seeing this a lot more as Drupal progresses. But before we get started, as always, I'm over at TorontoWebsiteDeveloper.com/store. Here you can see you can purchase all my video tutorial series that I have available. Hopefully this one will be up soon, and if you're interested, you can purchase it so you have it permanently as well. But that said, let's get back to the video tutorial. You'll see here I'm over at tutorial10.php, and I was just fooling around. This is hopefully going to be a pretty quick video tutorial, as I just want to walk you through and give you an idea of what the syntax is for objects, how they're used, what they are, and just a brief introduction to object-oriented programming. If this is really of interest to you, there's tons of different resources out there that you can go and you can check them out. I would encourage you to visit the New Boston. They have a lot of great video tutorials on object-oriented programming, specifically dealing with Java. But here, looking at our code editor, you'll see I've got my file tutorial 10, and I'm in my common path that I have been for the entire video tutorial series. And then I've got this weird code that we haven't seen anything really that looks like it at all throughout this video tutorial series. So as a brief sidestep, essentially what the best way I think to think about an object is to think of it in terms of a blueprint. So, sorry, that's a class. And an object would be an example of something made out of that blueprint. So if you think of an object as blueprints, let's think of it as blueprints for a house. Sorry, that's a class. So you have this class, which is a set of blueprints to build this house. The house is going to have a front door, maybe 2 windows in the front, a bedroom upstairs, kitchen downstairs, whatnot. If you think of an object actually takes that blueprint and then creates whatever it is that that blueprint is designed for. So in terms of our house example, if you created a new object out of the blueprint class, you would then have this house and it would be defined as the class defines it. So taking this into an actual example here, what I've done is I've created this class called Hello World. And what Hello World does is it just has a couple different greetings that we can throw out there, and it has some variables associated with it. So the best way to think about this is almost like a mini program for itself. It's a mini code base that's within your broader code, right? So the class is providing this blueprint for Hello World, and with that I have these variables that I can use from Hello World that are going to be common to any object created out of Hello World, and I'll show you how we do that. And then it has these functions that can be used, and so this function is greeting, this function is custom greeting. So just walking you briefly through the syntax here, I've got this keyword private, and then this keyword public, and then I'm declaring these two variables. So I've got greeting is equal to hello world, then I've got author is equal to Peter, but you'll see that one is private, one is public. What this means is who can actually access this variable, right? So private and public. Public means anything can really access it. Private means it can only be accessed within this specific object or this class. So when an object creates something, this private variable greeting can be accessed within that object, but nothing else, right? So this code can play with greeting, but nothing else can. Whereas public, anybody can play with author. So I know that's going to be confusing. I'm not going to go too far in depth into it. Maybe, if there's interest, I can do this advanced video tutorial series on PHP and we can get into that. But for now, just know that private and public are different. Public, anybody can kind of touch. Private, not anybody can touch. So that's a big key takeaway there. So this is how you define variables, right? And then you can also define functions within your class. So here I'm defining a function, which is greeting, and again you'll see it's public, meaning that it can be called anywhere, right? So I've got this greeting function, and what this function is going to do is it's actually just going to print out the greeting that I've defined up here. So here I've got greeting, and this variable might throw you off. What it's referring to is the actual object that's created. So when I create a new hello world, it's saying look at the object that's created and pass me in the greeting variable. I know this is probably going at light speed, but again, just the key takeaway here is you can create functions and you can get them to interact with the variables that you actually define. So I've created the other function here called custom greeting, and what custom greeting is doing is actually taking in a name, and then it'll print out hello and then whatever name is passed to it. So let's write some code to see how we can actually play with hello world. What I'm going to do here is just create a var, and I'm going to make this new hello world. And so that's how you create an object. You use the keyword new, and then you actually call the class name for that class. So I want var to be an object, which is a new hello world object. So what ends up happening is now var has access to greeting and custom greeting and can change the author, but it can't actually change private. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we call a function out of var. So we know that var has a function called greeting. So now what I'd like to do is call that. And the way that you do that is with this special syntax dash and then this open arrow. And then I'm going to actually call greeting. And what differentiates calling a variable greeting as opposed to calling a method is the brackets. So we're going to add brackets to tell PHP that we're calling the greeting function, or method rather. We're calling the greeting method of the class. And then it's going to actually go ahead and print hello world. So let's go ahead and save this, go back to our web page, reload it, and you'll see now we're getting hello world. And that's actually coming from this function here. So let's change this and let's call custom greeting. So I'm just going to go over here, custom, and then I've got to pass in a name. So we'll go ahead and save that. Go back over here, reload our page, and we'll see that we're now getting hello Peter. And that's because that's what this function is calling. But like I said, let's say we wanted to actually change the author here. So what I can do is first let's go ahead and access that. So I can go ahead and go print var author and then just semicolon. We can go ahead and save that. And remember, because we're calling a variable, we don't actually add these brackets because it's not a method that we're calling. So if we go back over here, we can reload this and you'll see we get Peter. And now let's try to print greeting and see what happens. Go ahead, reload this, and you'll see it's a private property. So like I mentioned before, because it's private, it can only be manipulated, accessed, changed, whatever, within the specific class. And because we're not in the class, when we call var greeting, we can't actually access what that variable is. So that's the difference between public and private. And you'll see here, if I wanted to go ahead and say var author, oops, get that out of there. So you can see author is equal to John, and then go var, let's print this, var author, save that, reload here. You'll see that John is now that variable name, right? Despite the fact that when we instantiated the class, author was actually Peter, I can actually change that because it's a public variable, and I can now make that John. So that's the difference between public and private. Typically, you're always going to want to have private variables because you do not want anybody to be able to access those and change those up on you. But I think that's it. That's all I typically wanted to show you with object-oriented programming. The big takeaway, again, just to recap, a class is like a blueprint for objects, right? And once you create an object, it's called instantiation. You'll have access to the variables as well as the methods that are defined within that class. The one caveat to that is if you have private, or what I didn't discuss was actually protected variables, you won't be able to access those outside of the class itself, the class code. So the example that we looked at there was having a private greeting as opposed to a public author. And that public private is the same for methods that are defined. So that's why I was able to call this function greeting from outside. Last example, if I went private function and then I tried to go var greeting, add my brackets, go back over here, reload the page, I'm going to get an error that I tried to call a private method. So that's it for this video tutorial series. Hopefully this helped you out. If you have any questions, please use the comments. Let me know. Always appreciate that. Give this video tutorial a thumbs up. I appreciate that as well. And again, I'm happy to help out. So please, hopefully we'll see you for the next video tutorial series. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you later.